brief response was discussed in our breakout rooms. What's the thesis of the text? How does Baldwin articulate the tensions between the Black God of Islam, the white God of Christianity? And then what stood out to you most about Baldwin's text, or his writing style, excuse me? Who would like to share?
I'll go first.
Thank you.
When me and Michael and Ryan were discussing about, we were discussing about that. What we thought about the whole entire reading was that he speaks from his mind of like being a black, African American person, and it's like he speaks like stuff behind the scene that other people don't see, because he's the one that he's the man who could really speak about like what really happens to the people. Because person like me, I can't really speak about it because I'm not an African American and stuff. So he starts speaking about his personal stuff, starts talking about like how it's said behind the scenes that people don't see. And yeah, that's what I got from the reading.
That's a really good call out, Jaime, and very attentive. He's a spokesman, right, for the Black experience. He articulates the happenings of the Black experience that don't readily be accessible to the mass culture. So he's kind of giving you what Jaime says is a behind the scenes insight. Let's get two more before we move on. Who else would like to discuss?
I saw the thesis. I don't know if it's necessarily correct, but I saw it as on page 3 when he's talking about just religion, because I thought that was a really big key focus about it. The word safety brings us to the real meaning of the word religion as we use it. I just thought it was that because we're seeing like a constant push and pull between how he works through religion as a Black man, and how he has to do with like realizing, oh, oppression is a big part of both of these religions, but it's also a big part of like how I grew up and who I am as a.
Yep. And I think if I could add on to that for you a little bit, right? Not only is it the idea of safety, but this idea that fear causes the need for safety, which makes religion like a safe space, if you. Ah, shit. Can you guys hear me? I'm breaking up, huh? Can you guys hear me?
You cut out a little.
Okay. Good. All right. Let's get one more and then we'll move into my notes.
I can go. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, Ron.
Am I cutting out or was that me?
You good, right? Just yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, yeah, from what I see, it's like I think it's like a caution or like a reminder to himself and to others, like of like the true harsh reality of being Black in America. Yeah, that's what I see it from reading the text.
And I like this idea, this notion of two things, right? True, and then it's harsh.
Yeah.
And as I get into my notes, I'll kind of crystallize that a little bit more. But I think, Ryan, you're spot on with the fact that there's like a harshness to Baldwin's writing. It's almost a crudeness to Baldwin's writing. But I would argue that that's reflective of his life experiences in the world that he views. So I'm gonna try to get into this real quick for sake of time, and I probably won't get through all of my notes, but you'll get the gist of it. So the essay that you read down at the cross letters at the letters from the region of my mind is from the book The Fire Next Time, published by James Baldwin. Baldwin by far is one of my favorite writers. I would say him and Octavia Butler. But for Baldwin, this age of 14 years old is very profound for him. And as you read through the text, right, it's a fork in the road, if you will, for youngsters in Harlem as he sees it. And he says, you know, you got to either choose the streets or choose a racket to get into that will essentially save your lives, right? And we know from the reading, right, the 14 is the age where he first becomes afraid, as he writes it, because the circumstances that he sees in the streets, right, the pimps, the prostitutes, the gamblers, the hustlers, right, prior to 14, they were an abstract notion. But when he turned 14, it was like, yo, I gotta choose a lifestyle for myself, or I'm going to end up on the streets. And I don't want to do that, right? I also don't have a talent or a skill. I'm not super attractive. I'm not super athletic. So what am I going to find? What's going to be my racket to sustain myself and help me avoid the streets? Then he talks about like the young women in his neighborhood, and how both groups are going through puberty, right? But for the young women, it kind of manifests itself in a different capacity, right? Yes, they're attentive to their changes, and the boys are attentive to the changes of the women's bodies at 14, but the women are more attentive to the fact that, one, they're going to need someone to protect them. And they know it will only come from the Black boys that are their contemporaries, right? And they also know that they need to save their soul, right? So a lot of the discourse between the Black women Baldwin is picking up on and the young Black boys is around them the Black women making sure that the Black boys' souls are saved, so they could have viable husbands, and their children will have viable fathers, right? Also, the uselessness of the school system, right? Oftentimes, he said, students would drop out of school just to pick up work because they knew that really school was a dead end for them. It didn't really equate to any real life experiences or real life chances for upward mobility. Also, Christianity kind of comes into the fore in the early pages. And he says that, one of the critiques that Black folks have of Christianity is this idea of morals. And Baldwin feels that Christianity or America is in no place to talk to Black folks about morals because we've experienced the immorality of whiteness, right? Baldwin's desire not to be defined or limited by the white gaze. And he says that African people, what they call the word that of that time, Negroes, right? They exist in this country. I'm sorry, y'all, if I keep cutting out, I'm gonna try to do the best that I can. I'm having like some real bad internet services today. He says, they exist in this country, Black folks, right? And they're taught to hate themselves from the moment that they open their eyes, right? So when you talk about, am I back? Okay, so when you talk about, Black on Black violence, you talk about colorism, when you talk about these forms of self-hate, Baldwin is saying that African people have been socialized to see themselves as less than from the time that their eyes open. Okay. Again, fear is very prevalent for Baldwin, right? And the fear that Baldwin is experiencing at 14 years old, it drives him into the church, right? And he says that love is the only power that could swing open the gate, which would allow Black folks to kind of experience life and humanity within this country. He says that the principles of the church, right, are blindness, loneliness, and terror, right? And he says that the blindness principle is its purpose is to efface the last two principles, loneliness and terror. He says this blindness becomes key. And if you think about the church, right, one of the credence of the church is to have what? Blind faith. So that goes right along with what Baldwin is articulating. You could, if you read closely, you could tell that there's a tension at play between Baldwin and his father. In fact, Baldwin wants to one up his father in the pulpit, and he wants to be a better preacher than his father was. If you read books like On My, what's it called? The Mountain, Going to the Mountain. It kind of serves as Baldwin's autobiography, if you will. You really get to the center of his tension with him and his father. And then, as he's going through the church and he's kind of finding his voice in the church, the contradictions of the church kind of move him out of the church, right? And I really love the way he begins to integrate Christianity and uses this to kind of work his way into his discourse around the Nation of Islam and Elijah Muhammad, right? And he kind of makes that transition, if you will, with the idea the soapbox preacher saying that the white man's heaven is the black man's hell, right? And the idea that African people on the continent say that when the Europeans came to Africa, they had the Bible in hand and the Africans had the land, right? But when the Europeans left, they had the land and the resources, and Africans were stuck with the Bible, right? So these contradictions kind of forces Baldwin his way out of the church, but also it allows him to introduce the theology of the Nation of Islam, right? I'm gonna kind of move forward. And then we get this distinction, right, or this bifurcation that Christianity's God is white, Islam's God, Allah, is black. And that's how religion has been divided, right? And this idea is what makes the Nation of Islam so popular amongst African people in Harlem, because they've seen how the white God, the God of Christianity, has not answered their prayers or answered their calls. So it would make sense as to praying to a quote unquote black God, right? Hearing that all white people are the devil is not a foreign concept to folks in Harlem, because they interact with these white folks every day and they experience their evil. So to hear someone preach about the white man being a devil, it's not something that's a foreign concept to the majority of the folks in Harlem. And it allows them to kind of fall in line with the message of Elijah Muhammad. I'm gonna end with this for sake of time. Three things. One, and I think he does a great job of articulating this, the Nation of Islam's ability to serve as a force of reformation for a lot of the people in the urban areas in Chicago, in New York, and Philadelphia, and what have you. Malcolm X being one of them, right? Started off as a hustler, as a pimp, right? As a gambler, right? He ran numbers. Fuck. Am I back? So fucking frustrating.
Yes.
Okay. All right, my bad, y'all. And Malcolm X was able to be changed from Detroit Red to the Malcolm X, the El Haj Malik El Shabazz that we know. And Malcolm X is not the only one, right? And in fact, the Nation of Islam is infamous for their ability to take ex-cons, ex-street people, and make them into well-serving members of the community and of the Black nation, right? Two things I'm gonna leave you with as it pertains to Baldwin. There's the Baldwinian pillars of what we call white inferiority, or what most call white supremacy, right? And for me, I don't like to use the term white supremacy, because think about it this way, right? If I have to have everyone around me bend over to make me feel tall, am I really tall? So in other words, if I have to make everyone else inferior to make myself feel superior, then I'm not really superior. It's really a system of inferiority complex, right? So that's why I call it, the Baldwinian pillars of white inferiority opposed to white supremacy. Can I ask you a question? What is the purpose of a pillar? What work does a pillar do?
To hold up.
To hold up. Thank you, Zuri. So if I'm talking about the Baldwinian pillars of white inferiority, what will these pillars do? Go ahead, Zuri.
Hold up white inferiority.
They're going to hold up this system of white inferiority, right? And the two pillars are the maintenance of white innocence.
Hold up white inferiority.
Yes. So the two pillars are the maintenance of white innocence. And the second pillar is the white imagination. Now we'll start with the white imagination. To me, the embodiment, the quintessential embodiment of the white imagination is Hollywood, right? They create films that become culture, that become reality, right? Has anyone seen the film Birth of a Nation by D.W. Griffith? I don't remember when it comes out, but I want to say in the early 19th century. D.W. Griffith's A Birth of a Nation. Anybody familiar with that film? so the film is a musing, if you will, on Reconstruction. So enslavement has ended. African people are now free. African people have the right to vote. And what they are effectively able to do in the film is place themselves in political office, right? And the way that they're depicted in political office is very shiftless. Feet on the table, eating watermelon, eating chicken. Another thing that's going on in this fictional town is Black men are rapidly raping white women, right? And so much so that in attempts to flee a rape attempt, a white woman throws herself off the cliff. And this activity sparks the rise of the Ku Klux Klan. Fuck, man. You know what? I'm sorry, y'all. This freezing thing is getting really bad. What I want to do, I want to give you all opportunity to fishbowl or just kind of talk about what you thought was interesting in the text. Hopefully we can get through that without me freezing too bad, or the Zoom freezing too bad. Is there anyone who needs to fishbowl? You could put it in the chat or raise an icon or something. Anyone needs to fishbowl. You should have 2 per semester. The only person off top that I don't remember having 2, Antonia, I don't remember you having 2. Daniel, I'm not sure if you have 2. And then Ashanti, I'm not sure if you have 2. If either of the 3 of you know that you have 2, please let me know. If not, I would suggest that you would fishbowl today.
Who was the middle name?
I'm sorry, Antonia, Ashanti, and Daniel. What are the 3? Gomez. I think everyone else has 2. Yes, no? Antonia, Daniel, Ashanti, you guys know if you have 2 fishbowls?
I only have 1.
Okay, so I would recommend that you fishbowl today because we don't have too many more opportunities. Antonia, how about you? Antonia? Okay, sure, freeze too. So for sure we'll have Ashanti go for the fishbowl. That way she can knock that out and have that. We're still waiting to hear back from Antonia or Daniel. Would you go with Antonio and Daniel could do? You guys could put it in the chat whether you've gone or not. And I'm just going to let Ashanti start so that way she has that knocked out. Ashanti, are you prepared to fishbowl today?
Yeah, I have so I can talk about, I guess.
And you could talk about your journal, you could talk about your breakout room, my notes, whatever you feel is important.
The audio. So
Hello?
wrote down the quote from came in more determined really than I've been to hell before I would let any white man spit on me, before I would allow the white people of this country to tell me who I was and limit me that way. This is something that I feel like Black teenagers struggle with. kind of trying to figure out like going kind of in that mold of they're not amount to anything like greater than and I kind of wrote about children either kind of stick to these stereotypes. I know always like we're teaching Black children in the class being a bit really focused on learning compared to that they either fit in that mold or they and take on a little bit more than what they them going to college, but like doing it because they feel like they have to in order to not fit the stereotype.
You know, you're kind of in and out. You're gonna get credit for this bowl. It's getting really bad. I'm at the in class early today, y'all. I will put this recording up. If you have any questions, just email me. I'm about to call Charter real quick and try to get this shit fixed before my next class. So we'll call it a day here. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out, but link with your partners and start working on your projects so you'll be ready for that. Sorry, y'all. Hopefully next week this will be resolved, okay?